Hello everyone and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. It's the last round of the season, which means it's the last race review podcast of the season as well, which I'm a little bit sad about. I don't know about you guys, but Formula 2 journalists Martin Lloyd and Jenny Craig were with me for this one. And Abu Dhabi splits opinion as a season finale, doesn't it? Having the season finale there. But overall, I'd say it was a good weekend, given that there wasn't an awful lot to play for, particularly in the Drivers' Championship. We were kind of the battle for P2 was the main focus, wasn't it? And obviously, we'll get onto the Teams' Championship in a bit. But yeah, enjoy the weekend, Martin.
Yeah, I thought it was quite an interesting weekend if you take it completely outside of the championship picture, which all got sorted last weekend in Qatar. I thought it was very interesting in terms of Joshua Duerksen having a hell of a lot of pace, Roman Stanek taking pole, Arvid Lindblad winning the sprint race. The few drivers that really had strong weekends in Abu Dhabi, and just thought if they or their teams could have been able to put those weekends together a bit more consistently earlier in the season. Some drivers that we've known have had pace for a long time and haven't quite been able to do it as much as Fornaroli or Browning or Vasseur. Very, very interesting weekend.
Yeah, Jenny, it felt like a bit of an unusual weekend in that the drivers that we usually see at the front, your Fornarolis, your Vasseurs, Brownings, they weren't necessarily in contention the whole way through the weekend, which spiced it up a little bit. We had some different faces at the front, albeit Arvid Lindblad winning the sprint race, and it felt a little bit different, didn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I thought as well that a lot of the drivers did really well, overtaking on a track that's known for not being brilliant for it. I thought the racing quality this weekend, apart from a couple of moves that we'll get onto, was really good. It's nice to see a bit of a change, isn't it? Because the grid's going to reset a hell of a lot for next year. A lot of the faces that we're used to have done their last race now.
Absolutely, it is nice to see. We'll go get into Josh Duerksen in a minute, but winning the feature race, and a few unfamiliar faces at the front, or different faces, should we say, at the front. And Martin, I know you've been on the press conference, one of the press conferences this weekend, so looking forward to hearing your insight. What we're going to be talking about today, then, so we're going to be talking about Invicta claiming the team's title. We're going to be talking about a bit of frustration for High Tech. I think they would have been hoping for more at the start of the weekend. Obviously, a penalty, or two penalties actually, that wouldn't have gone or didn't help them in the feature race. And then we're also going to be reviewing some of the major incidents from the weekend. Jenny's just touched on that as well. So lots to talk about, lots to get into. But the only place to start, really, Joshua Duerksen. As we've said, back-to-back feature race wins in Abu Dhabi. He started on from 8th on the grid last year and went through to win the feature race. He started from 8th on the grid this year and has gone through to win the feature race. Another magnificent performance, if I can get my words out. So good that I'm lost for words. Martin, I feel Josh Duerksen, we can put him down as the Yas Marina expert, can't we?
By the looks of it, yeah. He was talking in his interview after the race about how he qualified in 8th last year and won the race. He qualified in 8th again this year and thought, well, you never know, it might happen again. It's been a quite incredible run, to be honest, from Duerksen. He's got 6 podiums in the last 4 rounds, which is just ridiculous for a driver that, he'd won the sprint race in Melbourne, but he hadn't really been doing much in terms of points scoring before then, and he finished 3rd and 2nd in the 2 Monza races, 2nd in Baku, 2nd in the sprint in Losail, and then 2nd and 1st in the 2 races at Yas Marina. And it's really transformed both his season and AIX's season. It's really helped them to go a long way clear of Van Amersfoort. They've gone up to 9th in the, or they've been in secure in 9th in the constructors. Like you here in the team standings. There we go. 9th in the team standings, secure now with 107 points over Van Amersfoort with 44. He's gone up to 9th in the Drivers' Championship, which is a really, really solid foundation with which to go into the top team in F2 in terms of Invicta racing. So it was very, very impressive all weekend from Duerksen. It's been impressive for the last 3 or 4 rounds, and I'm really interested to see what he can do next year.
Yeah, so am I. Really interested to see what he can do. That's one for another podcast. But Jenny, were you impressed with Josh Duerksen, his recent run of form, how well he did at the weekend? For me, it's a really nice way for Josh Duerksen and AIX to kind of sign off from their 2 years together. And I don't. With all due respect to Josh, I think, we've spoken to him a few times on the podcast. I don't think he expected to be as competitive as he was last year when he came into Formula 2, winning races, winning the feature race at the end of last year. That's been a really nice relationship between him and AIX that's kind of blossomed, if you like, into the latter stages of this season. And I feel like 4 podiums in 6 races is a really nice way for them to sign off their time together, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's been a core part in helping that team that's been towards the bottom of the standings for years under different names. They've always been backmarkers, I think it's fair to say, but he got them well up there. He's constantly in the points. He's always on podiums. I think it's just a proper nice thing. And I know that when he's going to go to Invicta, he'll probably be up there even more. But it's nice to see that he's helped the team get as far as they have when none of us really expected it until around Monaco last year.
Yeah, definitely. Martin, what do you think? The middle of the season was difficult. We've touched on that, haven't we, for Josh Duerksen? The middle of the season was difficult. Why do you think he had that bad run? I'm just looking at it now. I mean, you look at from Jeddah, no points. Imola, no points. This is in the entire weekend, by the way. We've then got Monaco and Barcelona's 4 rounds in a row with no point scores at all. He then had some difficult rounds in Spa and Budapest, pointless rounds as well. I mean, that's 6 pointless rounds. He'll be one to stamp that out before he goes to Invicta next year, won't he? Because that, obviously, if he wants to be a title contender, you need to be scoring points every single weekend, right?
Absolutely. And I think Fornarelli proved that this year. The way you win a title is, of course, winning races, but it's also by scoring in 25 out of the 28 races, which is a frankly incredible record. You've seen the potential from Josh all season, obviously straight away in the sprint in Melbourne, but also things like at Silverstone where he spun out of 5th or 6th place in the closing stages, and that would have been a decent haul of points from that weekend if you think, because he finished 5th in the sprint and then he could have come 5th in that feature race, and that the end of that race it was a little bit balmy. And it's just been a season of what could have been for him for a lot of those rounds where there wasn't that pace. And I think to say that I expected him to be quite as successful as he has been since Monza would have been a bit of a stretch. But I think there was certainly a reversion that was going to come in naturally when you look at how fast he has been, how fast we know he can be, and the results that have come in, or the results that had come in up until Spa and Hungary, where again no points, 2 11th places in Spa and 11th and 12th in Hungary. And so I think maybe to get 6 podiums in 4 rounds would have been a bit more than I was anticipating, but I certainly think that he's got a lot of pace, and that there was definitely going to be some kind of reversion to that pace at some point during this season.
Yeah, and a great result for Josh Duerksen. Strategy played on his into his hands, I guess, Martin, as well, didn't it? It was it really came to him in that race. It came to him. It's a good call by the team, but obviously a bit lucky with the safety car. But he also jumped people in the stops, which AIX have got to take a lot of credit for as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I also think when, not necessarily now quite as much, because you can see the pace that Josh Duerksen has got, but when a couple of years ago the AIX PHM team was really, really struggling in terms of results and not picking up points, you think about, okay, what can they do that's outside of setting up the car and just having the raw pace that they didn't have in comparison to other teams. One of those things is pit stops. If you can have pit stops where in F2 they're much, much longer than in F1, if you can have pit stops where sometimes you can be half a second quicker than another team on average, just because that's how well trained you are, then in a balmy race that they were perhaps looking for in that time where they didn't have that much pace, they would have that opportunity to look forward and to go forward and jump people in the stops. And now that they have got that pace, now they have got a driver in Josh Duerksen who clearly on his day is excellent and is up there, with some of the best drivers in Formula 2. That makes the difference not just between getting no points and 1 or 2 points, but between fourth or fifth and actually being able to come on the podium. So I think it really impresses from them, especially when you consider their recent history, and it's clearly something that they've worked on.
Yeah, AX have come on leaps and bounds, haven't they, over the last few years, and it's great to see. From one team to another, Jenny, Roman Stanek brought it home in P2 after qualifying on pole, which means that Invicta are the team champions for the second year in a row. That'll be a nice way for Roman Stanek to finish his F2 career, but also a nice way, obviously nice for Invicta to win back-to-back championships. That's more than nice. That's the best they can do, right?
Yeah, I think they've just had such an amazing driver combination this year. Obviously, Fornaroli, one of the best, I think, seasons from an F2 driver, from a champion for a long time. And I think that we've seen a different Stanek to what we've seen over the last few years, a lot less mistakes, and especially the last few rounds, just really quick. So it'll be weird not to have him on the grid next year, but I think he's done himself proud. He's ended in not the best way possible, because that would have been a win, but close.
Yeah, no, exactly that. So really good effort from Roman Stanek, who for me is one of the most improved drivers this year. Absolutely, I think he's been brilliant, and he deserves credit. Obviously, he inherited that win in Spa, didn't he? Feature race win, so he has a feature race win to his name. And will he be? How do you think he'll be feeling, Martin? Do you think he'll be buzzing with that and it'll be a nice way to sign off with a P2? Or do you think he'll also be thinking to himself, pole position, could have won that race today?
I think for Roman Stanek, this whole year has been almost a case of what could have been. I think if you look at Leonardo Fornaroli's pace and actually Roman Stanek's pace in qualifying, which has been at times better than Fornaroli's, 7-7 on the qualifying head-to-head, there was no reason why Roman Stanek couldn't be up there with Leo in the championship fight. And it's just been on race day, especially in the early part of the season where he didn't have the execution. In Barcelona, I believe he qualified 4th and then fell down to 11th in the end because that tyre management wasn't quite there. And if you actually look at his second half of the season, there's more podiums, there's more high results in qualifying. There's a pole position we had at Yas Marina. There was a really good run he had in the kind of Silverstone, Spa, Hungary period where, again, if he hadn't spun out at Silverstone, he could have had a much better result there. He won at Spa, albeit with the penalties for Arvid Lindblad. And you just think there is a lot of pace there. He's in the best team, and he has been showing that pace pretty regularly, and the results haven't all been there. And I think Roman will be kicking himself a little bit, and it's something he touched on in the press conference on Friday after qualifying when he had got that pole position, and he said he was a little bit sad to be leaving Invicta and leaving Formula 2 because he hadn't been able to secure that ticket to another year with Invicta in Formula 2, which I think would have been what he would have wanted to do and to go again for that championship. And it's difficult for him because you see your rookie teammate go through and take the championship, and the driver who came before him also do the same, and you're in 10th in the standings. But I think he can take a lot of confidence in that he has shown he's got the pace. It's just wherever he ends up next, and he's not quite sure where that is yet, but wherever he ends up next, it's got to... He's going to have options, I think, because he has shown he's got that. And if he gets under the right management and the right team principal with the right team around him, I think he could be a pretty quick driver, perhaps in endurance or something like that.
Yeah, no, positive future for him. He was just casually chilling with Yannick Sinner at the week. Did you see that on his Instagram?
Yeah, as
you do. As you do. Casual, yeah, exactly. Just Yannick Sinner just chilling down in the Invicta garage. Good for Roman Stanek, and I'm really glad that Roman has finished his Formula 2 career in a real positive way. Someone who I think will also be happy with the end of their Formula 2, Jenny, is Jack Crawford. would have been a contender for a podium, maybe even the race win, if Dams hadn't have made that mistake with their tyres, fitting the tyres on the wrong wheels at the start of the race, having to swap them over, and then him getting the stop-go penalty. Meant he went all the way down, took that penalty early doors, didn't he? Lap 1, took the penalty, and then fought his way back, but he just ended up on the wrong strategy at the wrong time, didn't he? He was on the medium tyres, would have been... I bet fuming in the cockpit when that safety car came out. But he has secured P2 in the standings, though. How do you think he'll be reflecting on the weekend, Jenny?
I think the team are very lucky that Browning and Vashaw didn't score too much in the last couple of races, because that mistake was pretty huge. And I think if you Jack Crawford and if he'd have lost that, then I think you'd be a bit more bitter. But I think as the season as a whole, luckily it doesn't matter too much. It would have been nice, obviously, for him to have left F2 on a happier note, but he drove incredibly. And I think once the dust has settled, that'll be a big positive to him. He's still a vice champion in F2, and that'll look pretty good on his CV. They're just very lucky that wasn't too costly.
For sure. No, I totally agree. And, he's a P2 finish in Formula 2. We've seen plenty of drivers graduate to Formula 1 eventually.
And win a championship now.
Exactly. That is true. That is so true. Lando Norris, we'll talk about him in a bit, by the way. But Lando Norris, P2 in 2018 in Formula 2, and now he's winning world championships. So it's not all bad news for Jack Crawford, is it? He's still so young as well, Jenny. He's only 20 years old, and I think we forget how young he was when he first stepped into Formula 3, first off, and then Formula 2. Still 17 when he goes down. He still is one of Formula 2's youngest podium finishers at 17 years old. It's in Australia a few years ago for high tech. I think people forget how young he is, and I think a year at Aston Martin will be really beneficial for Jack to learn from a team like Aston Martin and some guy called Fernando Alonso. I've heard he's got some pretty good advice, no?
Yeah, I think he'll obviously learn a lot from Fernando. I think he's not too far off the people that we've seen go to Formula 1 ability-wise. I think looking at Lindblad and a few of the others from last year, I think he's more than there. To be honest, I think he's a more finished product. He doesn't make too many mistakes. He's fairly consistent, and he knows how to dominate a race, which is pretty handy already. I think Aston are pretty lucky if anyone decides to retire soon.
Well, yeah, there could be a couple of options if I can genuinely imagine. Here's one for you, right? I can genuinely imagine if Aston Martin get the car wrong next year and they are the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe even 9th or 10th fastest car next year.
11th.
11th. Oh yeah, good point. Good reminder. Yeah. If they aren't competing for wins and they're competing for the back end of the points or no points at all, does a 44-year-old Fernando Alonso want to stick around for the entire season? For me, there's one reason that he's sticking around right now, and that's because there's a chance that Aston Martin produce a really, really good car for next season, right? And they could potentially be podiums, winning races, and even winning the World Championship. If they don't provide Fernando Alonso with that, does he want to stick around? And therefore, if he then retires, if he calls it a day, if he does 6-7 rounds and thinks, you know what, not going to win any races this year, let's call it a day, Jack Crawford is probably going to be the person that steps into that seat, no, Martin?
Yeah, and I think that's the position that Jack's put himself into, and that I think when a driver does 3 years in F2, we've seen it with Teo Pourchaire, Felipe Drugovich over the years, unless you've got a really decent budget or sponsorship or marketing angle that you can bring to a Formula 1 team, it's going to be difficult for you to make the step up immediately. But I think for Jack, he's a little bit similar to Stanek, but he's been able to put it together much more consistently in races. It's always been clear that Jack Crawford has got the pace, has also, I think for his age was really important, got the maturity to be a Formula 1 driver. And you don't really see many mistakes from Jack whatsoever, which you have seen from some other drivers that have gone at up to Formula One over the last few years, you don't really get mistakes from Jack. What you do get is pace pretty much every weekend, as long as in Monza there was engine problems and so forth, and he had the off weekend in Qatar, and he really came close to winning that title this year. I think he'd be a really good option if the stars were to align. It's a big if, but I think he's put himself in the best position possible, especially with there being 11 teams on the grid now, for any future seat that comes up.
Yeah, definitely. I think my bold prediction at the start of the year was that Jack Crawford would get a Cadillac seat. I think that was my bold prediction at the start of the year. Obviously, that's not happening. But if he was to step into an Aston Martin seat halfway through next season, then yeah, listen, I think it's good. Still, he
did reject an Andretti, a Formula E seat, which is rumored to be Andretti. So you weren't too far off.
Do you know, right?
It's not quite what you envisaged.
Not quite what I envisaged. No, I won't claim that I just said an Andretti seat full stop, because I didn't. But do you know who, if he was to step into that seat next year, if Fernando Alonso was to step away and Jack Crawford was to step in, poor old Felipe Drugovich would be fuming, wouldn't he? But anyway, it's all hypotheticals. Nothing happened yet. One person who's definitely going to be in Formula One next year is Arvid Lindblad, and he was our sprint race winner on Saturday. And yeah, really, really good performance actually from Arvid. I think he controlled the race well there, Martin. No?
Yeah, I thought it was impressive, and I thought it was something that it was the sort of performance that we've been looking for more regularly from Arvid as F2 watchers rather than F1 watchers. For the most of this year, we saw the quality that he's got in Barcelona when he won the feature race, and we know Campos is strong there, but he had Pepe Marti's number all weekend there. We saw in the Jeddah sprint race his pace, Imola in the sprint. It's just been putting that pace together more regularly, because it's not so much been an issue of mistakes a lot of the time for Arvid, although there was the Monza feature race with Alex Dunn. It's just been that race pace hasn't always seemed to be there, which from my point of view, with the hype that he had coming into the season, with the way that Isaac Hadjar performed last season with that Campos, I did expect a bit more from him this season. I think Red Bull have seen enough in their testing previous car programs and their free practice sessions to trust him and give him a go. And I really, really hope he does well in F1 next season. I think he will do, to be honest. But I was definitely expecting this season in Formula 2 a bit more in terms of race wins, a bit more in terms of podiums, and be able to put together that championship challenge. So, there's a few things that happen outside of his control, such as that Spa penalty that we talked about earlier. But I just think it was a good one for Arvid, to almost for himself to say, okay, it might not have been the season results wise that we wanted, but the pace was there, and let's use that as a good springboard for F1 next year. And he still finished 6th in the championship at the end, which really isn't bad going at all.
No, it's definitely respectable, isn't it? And yeah, Jenny, what are your thoughts on Arvid Lindblad? We haven't actually heard your thoughts. You haven't been on for a little while. We haven't heard your thoughts on Arvid Lindblad stepping up to Formula One. Is that an exciting move, do you think, for Formula One fans? And yeah, I think you're right, Martin. Like, Arvid Lindblad finishing the season strong will be good for his confidence going into Formula One, won't it, Jane?
I think, I'm not sure he's the finished product yet. That's my only concern with him. But I think he has got these races where he shows that he has the talent to be able to do it. He's just, as Martin said, he's not got the consistency yet. I just hope they give him the time to come good.
Yeah, and I think they will. I think you're right. It maybe is a touch too early for Arvid, but the talent is there. We've seen it in glimpses this season. We saw it in glimpses in Formula 3 next year. And this is a different Red Bull setup that he's stepping into now next season, with Christian Horner moving on. Laurent Verkees is a very different leader to Christian Horner. And I think we saw it a little bit in Formula 1 over the weekend with Max not playing in games. I think that's a little bit of Laurent Verkees. You're starting to see that leadership kind of trickle down now. And I think
also crucially, Helmut Marko moving on.
Exactly that. And I was just about to say that the other thing is that Helmut Marko potentially retiring from the Red Bull setup. Both of those things combined, for me, mean that Arvid will be given time, and I think that's really, really important. And we've seen how good Kimi Antonelli has been at the back end of this season once he's navigated his way through a difficult period, in his career in the middle of the season. He's come out the other side of that, and he will be stronger for that. And I think Arvid might have a similar season to Kimi. They're a similar age. He's going to go into it the same age as what Kimi is, and he's going to mature at the same rate, I think, through the season. So, really interesting to see what Arvid does next season. And he might be amazing. He might be. You never know if Max moves on in 2027, he might be the one getting the call up in 2027 for a Red Bull seat. But anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves there.
Well, I mean, if you'd have said at the end of 2023, this time in 2 years' time, Isaac Hadjar is going to be in a Red Bull F1 seat.
Yep,
you wouldn't have thought that. So
absolutely not off the back of a season, not a great season for high tech, where Jack Crawford, by the way, beat him in equal machinery in that high tech. So that's also what I imagine what Jack Crawford will be saying behind closed doors as well. I beat Isaac Hadjar when we were teammates head to head in Formula 2. So really interesting. Let's talk about. I said to you earlier on, there was a few incidents this weekend that I wanted to discuss. First one, the biggest one, Alex Dunn and Victor Martins coming together again. How many times are those two going to come to sit together in Formula 2? What feels like the 1000th time this season they've come together. And then Kian Shields, I guess blindsided. Didn't see that. I didn't see Alex Dunn sat in the middle of the road. Jenny, what were your initial thoughts on that incident between Alex Dunn and Victor Martins? I can't believe how many times they've come to sit together this season. I really can't.
You say it all the time, Senna's quote, if there's a gap and I no longer go for it, I'm not a racing driver, but I did not see any gap whatsoever there.
Martin, agree, optimistic from Alex. We know that he's a risk taker. I think that's fair to say. He's an aggressive driver, isn't he? And if he sees a gap, he will go for it. Was that a tiny step too far? The stewards thought so, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a argument to be had that you've got to, especially on the first lap, where drivers are going to be perhaps more tentative, and if you can show that aggression and catch a driver unawares, then brilliant. But there was never he was never close enough to get anywhere near making a gap, and it was actually almost he almost missed Martins. He only collided with the back of his car. He almost missed Martins. Just went wide in making a move because he was so far back. It summed up his season in a lot of ways, in that he had the pace to do pretty well, I would say, on Sunday, but he has that silly incident and he is out of the race. Martins is out of the race. I think what he's actually shown a lot of this season is, in my opinion, if you look at an example like Spa, Alex Dunn was potentially the fastest driver in Formula 2 this season on door pace.
I agree.
And that's been my opinion for a lot of this season, in that if you look at qualifying, if you look at how fast he's in races, how good he's at controlling races when he's up there, I think he's been the fastest on pure pace. And what's let him down, unfortunately, is that when he's in those situations, such as Monaco, such as last Sunday in Abu Dhabi, such as the feature race in Baku, where he locked up a few times into that turn 15, he's just not quite able to put it all together. What I would say with Alex Dunn is it's a hell of a lot harder to find half a second of pace that you haven't got as a driver than to iron out those mistakes. It's been confirmed that he will be with Roding again next season. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he does, and if he's able to as well as maintaining that bullish side, because you want a driver that's aggressive, as well as maintaining that side, you want him to see if he can iron out those mistakes and really put a more concerted push together for the title at the end of next season. Because if he does, he's going to have all manner of options at the end of it, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. The incident with Martins has meant 2 penalty points been added to his license, 12 points now, which generally is the amount of points you get for a ban. But is he going to pick up a ban for that, Martin?
So over at Feeder Series, we've been told by the FIA that the F2 and F3 penalty points expire at the end of the season, which suggests that he's not going to get a ban of that first round in Melbourne. So for his 2026 Championship Challenge, which he's going to be one of the favourites, it gets off to a good start, if you can say that, in that he will be allowed to compete in Melbourne next year.
But doesn't that not set a precedent? We were speaking about it just before, weren't we? Whereby anyone that's on 10 super, it doesn't matter how many points you're on, you can go into the last round knowing that you can do anything. You can get away with anything, and you're not going to get a ban because the points just get reset at the end of a season, which isn't the case in Formula One, for example, no?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I'm not sure what the reason is for it, because as you say, in F1 it's a 12-month period rather than a seasonal period. Perhaps it's I don't know if it's to do with if teams have to find another driver and finding the financial resource for that, for that one extra round at the start of the year. I'm not quite sure what the reasons are. I do think it sets a bit of an interesting precedent in that, as you say, if the driver's on 10 points, 11 points going into that feature race in Abu Dhabi, if they feel they need to do something, I don't think there's anyone in the current grid that would, but if they feel they need to do something that is perhaps pushing the boundaries, but they think, oh, I'm not going to get a race ban, then it kind of gives them the opportunity to do so. And so that does concern me a bit, almost making that a free-for-all if you have got those 10 or 11 penalty points. But I also think if that kind of situation came up, then the stewards would look at those as exceptional circumstances for distributing penalties as well.
Yeah, I would get it if you're moving from one series to another. I don't particularly want drivers carrying penalty points with them into another series, but I don't know.
Between seasons in the same series, I don't personally see why they don't carry over, but these sorts of things are generally a well-founded reason for it.
Exactly that. I'm sure there is. Cool. Jenny, any other drivers that stood out for you this weekend? I feel like we haven't touched on a few. Dino Beganovic, obviously second on the road in the sprint race, was penalised for breaking the pit lane speed limit. So he lost that P2, finished P4 in the end. Nikola Solov has had a good few rounds, hasn't he? Rafa Villagomez, or P6 in the feature race as well. A really good second half of the season. Any of those drivers stood out? Anyone else that stood out to you?
I think my biggest one was Solov. I wasn't expecting him to come into F2 and make such an impression. And then, like you said, Villagomez has been really, really surprising as well over the last few rounds.
Second half of the season for Villagomez, really. Podium in Barcelona, was it? If my memory serves me correctly, Barcelona and Losail. So yeah, really good. Back end of the season, or second half of the season for him. Anyone else, Jenny?
I think maybe the biggest surprise, we touched on it before, was Browning, but for opposite reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, what's going on with Luke Browning this weekend? He was on the optimal strategy in the feature race, if you like. The 9 other drivers, or the 8 other drivers that were on that same strategy, all finished in the top 8 of the race. Luke Browning was the only one on that strategy to then drop outside of the points and be passed by some of those drivers. He was, I think it was over 10 seconds off of Kushmani by the end of the race, Martin. What on earth happened with Luke Browning? Because he's so much better than that.
Well, I think in a similar way to Alex Dunn, Luke Browning has been one of the drivers who has had one of the most viewable, one of the best viewable raw paces that we've seen all season.
Yeah.
In pretty much every round. So it was really confusing, and the way in which it came about made me necessarily think it wasn't his fault, because of course he starts in 17th, I believe, gets into the top 10 by the end of lap 1. I know there was the accident, but by the safety car, I know there was the accident, but that's a lot of places that he's gained by overtaking people at the start, when, as I said earlier, drivers are a bit more wary, and there's a little bit more to be gained by being a little bit more daring or having that extra bit of skill and confidence. But then as you go through the rest of the race, there was just very little there, and it was something that was really strange, because of course Dino Beganovic had a good weekend. And Luke Browning is not a driver that you associate with just having such little pace. So I'm really not sure what was going on there at High Tech this weekend. But I know he's off to a super formula test in Suzuka in the next few weeks. So I'm sure that his focus will be turning to that pretty sharply.
Absolutely, and going to be working with the Williams team going into next season. So really exciting times for Luke Brown. And any other standout drivers for you, Martin, before we wrap up?
I think Gabriele Mini deserves a big mention. I think that it's been a pretty difficult season for him with some runs of point scoring, but nowhere near the amount of podiums that he would have expected. And again, that's in large part down to the fact that Prema still haven't got a hold of that 2024 F2 Dallara car. But to get a feature race podium in the last race of the season really, really sets him up well for next year with MP, who have had multiple challenges for titles over the last few years with different cars, whether that be Drugovic or Richard Verschoor. And I'm really hoping that next year can be the year where Gabriele Mini shows that pace that we all know he has and that he hasn't quite shown consistently enough this year. So I think third place, a really, really good result for him on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good mention. We haven't mentioned him, and I think it's a really good point that, good weekend for him, and absolutely could be a title favourite for next season. That combination of Gabriele Mini and MP Motorsport for me. Gabriele Mini is, such a better driver than this season has shown. So, many people's favourite for the title going into this year. So, let's see what that combination can do next year. Invicta are the team's champions for the second year in a row. Massive congratulations to them. They finished 38 points clear of High Tech, who record their highest place finish in Formula 2. Okay, that's all we got time for today. Stay tuned, though, because we've got a season review podcast coming your way very soon, including some special guests. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. We've also got an exclusive podcast with Formula 2 CEO Bruno Michel, which will be coming out between now and Christmas as well. So you know what to do. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any of your favourite Formula 2 content with your favourite Formula 2 drivers. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.